format than my usual format, and this is called State of the Wine Industry. And I get asked a lot of questions, about the wine industry from clients and customers, and I kind of pay attention and I listen. So some of the things that, of course, everybody's asking me about lately is, okay, what's going on with the tariffs, and how is that affecting us? So, right now we are still on a holding pattern for whatever our reciprocal tariffs are going to be. It is actually at a 10% level right now, but they are also supposedly negotiating. When you're talking about, especially my industry, when we're talking about European wines, we're talking with the EU, and I perfectly get it. We have to at least balance our trade position in the United States. But one thing that obviously it does affect me, and just to bring everybody up to date if they did not hear it, but there was a lawsuit presented by VOS Selections, which is Victor Schwartz Selections and some other small importers. 12, including Victor Schwartz, filed a lawsuit in the United States Court of International Trade challenging President Trump's Liberation Day tariffs. The lawsuit argued that these tariffs were unconstitutional, illegal, and would create a significant financial burden for businesses and consumers. So, just to explain a little bit about this lawsuit, Victor Schwartz's attorney presented the case and said it was unconstitutional based on the fact that a seating president, does not have the power to put tariffs unless it's an emergency situation. And of course, we saw the original tariffs with Mexico and Canada and China, just based on fentanyl, which they were claiming this was also part of the tariff reasons. But that had nothing to do with Europe, and actually all the reciprocal tariffs that they were laid down with different countries. So the attorney for Victor Schwartz fought, litigated the case, bringing constitutional issues into the courtroom, and based his findings that it was unconstitutional for these tariffs. And there was a 3-panel judge. It was a federal court, but at the same time, they did favor in the ruling on the side of the plaintiff, which, obviously, Victor Schwartz won a major victory battle. So this has actually gone to an appeals court. The appeals court has stated, okay, so we're going to, pause this verdict, and we're going to give it a 30-day or a 3-week window where both the plaintiff and the Trump administration will bring their positions on why they feel that their case is strong. And of course, the Trump administration is bringing that they are negotiating with the EU and other countries, and that this lawsuit would actually hinder them from doing so. So there is a 3-week window, but after hearing the attorney for Victor Schwartz, or for VOS Imports, as well as the other 12 attorneys, feels very strongly that this is not only will be, they will stay with this verdict, but even if it gets appealed to the Supreme Court will also render a judgment in the favor of the plaintiff, based on the fact that there is no constitutional power for President Trump. This would be a major victory for people, who are importers like me. We wanted to go back to, obviously, the way it was previously. And this is putting a lot of strain on industries. I'll just give you, for instance, I was in Whole Foods yesterday in Long Island, where I live here, and there was sections of the store that actually were completely shelfless. So there was nothing on the shelves, and there was a sign that said, "We are sorry, but we are out of stock on until further notice." I did notice that one section was Italian pasta. So, I was thinking, okay, we are already starting to see shortages of items because, basically there's going to be a lot of importers that will not be bringing in products just based on the fact that they don't know what this is going to be. So from that standpoint, um, it is right up on the air, and I have a lot of suppliers in France that are asking me, all these questions, and we're putting a lot of things on hold and on pause. So, but that's one part of the industry that I wanted to bring up. A second part of the wine industry, and let's just say the alcohol industry, which is concerning for a number of people. So we're not even talking about the tariffs. We are talking about a decline in alcohol consumption at the retail level. Of course, this doesn't seem to be affecting restaurants. I go out to restaurants with my wife all the time, especially here in New York, and the restaurants are packed with people, and there are people actually drinking wine and drinking cocktails. So the overall industry um, in the restaurant section or the hospitality sections seem to be okay. And of course, the tariffs haven't quite kicked in there yet, so the prices will be affected in restaurants, especially top level restaurants where you're going to see tariffs raising the cost of wines in these. And I'm already seeing that right now. So I've been talking to a number of my restaurants, and they're already seeing price increases, from their suppliers. So everybody's looking for deals and they're looking for values. And again, I always tell people, look, you always have to find a silver lining in any position. So we do think that this will create some opportunities, and you have to be opportunistic in this situation. But that doesn't solve the problems of the lack of wine consumption or alcohol consumption for people. And there's a lot of reasons for this. And I'm going to, give my 2 cents on this from what I've heard and what I've seen. And one of the things that I have noticed, and I just noticed this the other day, one of the leading podcasters in the United States, Joe Rogan, who's got millions of followers, God bless him that he does his podcast, and he does quite well with his podcast. But he came out and told everybody that he's cold turkey on alcohol, and but he has also been dieting, and there is a number of people in the United States who have been taking drugs and medication for losing weight. And, this is something that, of course, Americans should be, health conscious today. And I'm an advocate of that. I exercise quite frequently. I mean, I go out for walks 5 miles and 6 miles, and I'm starting to, diet a bit as well. But at the same time, I have noticed that a lot of these drugs, and I'm not on any medication like that because I don't believe in these. I don't believe in such things. So, but just to give you a heads up on Ozempic, it's a medication that helps you lose weight and health improvement. However, there's potential side effects from a lot of this Ozempics, and of course, while people are taking Ozempic, it's curtailing your appetite, but it also curtails the fact that you don't drink alcohol. So there could be some residual business with this, and I think what happened, and I'm just going to throw out again my thought on this. During COVID, when a lot of people were working from home, wine sales and alcohol sales were booming. And of course, I have a lot of retail customers that say, they sold so much wine to people because people were kind of stuck in the house, and they really couldn't leave. So a lot of people were drinking wine, they were drinking alcohol, they were also eating, snacking, and of course they probably gained weight. So this changed completely the way people, of course after COVID, it changed the way people actually looked at at alcohol consumption, especially at home. And of course, they went out to restaurants. They couldn't go out before. That's why restaurants are doing really great. Of course, nobody could go out to a restaurant. And so now you're seeing the restaurants are packed with people, which is great. We want to see people out and about, enjoying, food and wine. And, this is all a part of our industry. So we're very pleased on that. But a lot of my stores are reporting that people are just not going into stores. There's no foot traffic, which is quite concerning. And we all feel, okay, So there are reasons in this downturn, and I wanted to discuss that because, of course, again, this is called state of the industry for me personally, and it's not just the the wine business which affects me, but it's also it affects the alcohol or the overall alcohol end of the business, and even beer consumption. Sales are down on beer, and people, I have nothing to do with that industry, but at the same time, I am hearing that there's a number of people. But let's talk about causes for wine sales, especially to be dropped. So there's slower economic growth. Okay, we get it. So inflation, the rising prices, people were complaining, why are prices rising so much, rising so much? Of course, the tariffs doesn't help. I mean, that's going to make it worse. But let's just talk prior to tariffs. There was an economic slowdown of rising prices due to inflation, and a lot of people will say, well, why was prices on wine and alcohol rising? Well, also shipping wine was expensive. That raised the cost for imports and even truck shipping. So I noticed that quite a bit when I would buy wine, that the shipping prices went up. Bottle costs went up because a lot of companies during COVID could not produce as many bottles, and there was a big demand for bottles. So the prices of bottles, of boxes, of corks, all of the things that go into making wine, those prices went up. And of course, it's inflation, and even from a standpoint of where we store wine, they went up on prices just to store, wine, because, everything is going up in pricing. So this caused a little bit of grief, I think, for the consumer to see what we call slower economic growth. Impact of the pandemic, I think I just talked about that. Waning interest in Western habits, that's fascinating in itself. Declining consumption, anti-alcohol messaging. So I want to get into this because there is constant studies now that are coming out about, and they're anti-alcohol, obviously. Anti-alcohol people have been around for centuries. In fact, as you probably know history, we had of course with alcohol, during Prohibition times, where the government came out and they made it illegal for any alcohol. This was, of course, started by the suffragettes, and of course, there was a lot of alcoholism. Of course, wine was nothing in those days. Nobody was drinking, French wines and everything. They were drinking whiskey or gin or whatever they were drinking, which again has nothing to do with my end of the industry, which is the wine end of the industry. And I'm going to explain a little bit about that. Why I'm kind of like trying to diffuse alcohol. And wine is alcohol, but I'm going to explain a few things about how it all gets thrown into this same problem. Yes, if you drink a lot of alcohol, let's just say if you drink a bottle of vodka in 2 or 3 days, you are going to suffer major problems with kidney damage. So I believe in moderation. I have always practiced that. And there are ways to practice moderation when you're drinking wine, and by all means, 1 glass or 2 glasses of wine is moderation. That's what people practice, okay? But I always say, if you're drinking wine and, let's just say hypothetically, you want to drink 3 or 4 glasses of wine, that's fine. Try to have a glass of water with that wine. That'll actually make a major benefit in your life. And again, moderation is key here. So there are ways now to, when you buy a bottle of wine and you don't want to drink the whole bottle of wine, you can use Coravin. I use a Coravin. It's something that it pushes argon into the bottle of wine, and basically it keeps the wine from going bad. And you can drink that wine for 3 weeks, 4 weeks. Okay, so that's a major investment, because they cost about $100 or $200. Not everybody wants to go out and buy a Coravin. I have to use it professionally, but there are people right now that are using these, and they're saying, wow, I actually saved the wine from going bad. Yes, because if you buy a $20 or $30 bottle of wine and you open the bottle, and 1 week later the air is getting to the wine. The wine will just precipitously go down in quality, and just, because the oxygen is in the wine. So if you really want to invest in just have 2 glasses of wine, which is basically it's not a bad thing to drink 2 glasses of wine. It's a very healthy proposition, especially with food. And there's other ways too. There's VacuVim, where you just buy the rubber stoppers, and people can actually just stop it with their they take the oxygen out. That costs like $30 for the package. You buy 3 little, if you want to say, VacuVim rubber stoppers on the top. Again, these are, you can look online and Google Coravin or VacuVin, and you can get these in Amazon. They sell all these things. But at the same time, I think it's important. Yes, it's consumption. You should limit the amount of alcohol that you drink, because yeah, if you're drinking, let's just say, a bottle of wine, like anything else, you're going to gain a little weight, but there is such a thing, besides going on all of these diet things which is pumping chemicals into your system. I don't know why anybody in their right mind would be taking these with these things. And of course, God bless Joe Rogan, that he wants to do, get off of alcohol. He feels better about his life. I think that's great. I think that who knows? Maybe he was a bourbon drinker, or maybe he was a heavy Scotch drinker, or maybe he drank a whole bottle. And of course, who's going to feel good about that at the end of the day? So I think curtailing alcohol, in a moderate way is fine. I mean, but yes, these are a lot of reasons why the wine business, I think, is I say, jokingly, make wine fun again. I think that wine is thrown in there with Scotch and bourbon and vodka and gin, and the alcohol content on a bottle of wine is 12, 13, 14%. When you're talking bourbon and whiskey, that's 80 proof. So the alcohol content is much higher based on liquor, which I call liquor. I don't call it, and it's alcohol, but wine is a completely different world. And something that I think is very, very important is called the Mediterranean diet. A lot of people, don't really, they want a diet, and they say, okay, I want the quick fix. Apparently, when you take these drug pills like Ozempic, and if you stop taking, because you can be addicted to, this is a drug, so you can be addicted to these things. So let's just say, hypothetically, you take yourself off of that, you're going to gain weight again. So there is no quick fix except for walking, eating a proper diet, eating lots of fruits and vegetables, and wine is all part of that, because there was the French paradox, where they were saying, how do the French stay so thin, and they're eating cheese and they're eating wine and everything like that? Well, they're exercising, they're eating within moderation. These people eat a lot of bread. But the Mediterranean diet, so it's people on a Mediterranean diet can have 1 or 2 glasses of red wine daily. Daily, they say. So, but researchers have also found that the Mediterranean diet, including alcohol, can reduce the risk of cardiovascular disease. Are you listening out there? That means if you have 2 glasses of wine, you are also, it's also something that will help your system. So yes, there's a lot of anti-alcohol things going out there, a lot of research going on and everything like that. But at the same time, there's a lot of people that say within moderation, you will survive through this. So also, I wanted to break down other things in the wine industry that I do noticed, because it's like, which types of wines are really performing well in 2025. So right now, the leading wine in sales is white wine. People are actually drinking more white wine than they're drinking other wines. It's one of the top leading parameters right now. Red wine sales have really declined, and I think that there's a number of reasons for that. If you do drink white wine, it's a little lighter in style. People are drinking lighter. They're not drinking heavy wines. That's not to say that people do not, they still go out and buy a bottle of Cabernet for $100 a bottle or $50 or whatever they're spending, or even Bordeaux. I mean, I love Bordeaux. I had people over the house the other day. We had steak and we were drinking Saint Julien, and we were like blown away because we were thinking, wow. But I don't do that on a regular basis. So I drink most of the time. I drink white wine, and I like it cold and I like it refreshing, and even if it's just two glasses, I enjoy that, especially with some food. But right now, there's non-alcohol wines are surging. So within the last, 2023 and 2022, they almost doubled the amount of sales. Non-alcohol wines, orange natural wines are up, quite a bit, and but low alcohol wine is surging too. So that means that 6% alcohol or 7% or 8%, those wines are also surging in the market too. That's kind of interesting when you look at, even though there might not be a lot of wine sales. The problem in New York here is if you go into a liquor store, they cannot sell no alcohol wine. That has to be purchased in, and only in restaurants. So somebody just told me that the laws in the state of New York, which is interesting because New Jersey and Florida and all these other states are completely different. Non-alcoholic wine can only be sold by a distributor to a restaurant. It cannot be sold in the store. And in fact, that is true because I did go into a Whole Foods and they do not even have a bottle of non-alcohol wine. In New York, Whole Foods cannot sell wine. They can only sell beer. So, but that's kind of interesting to me. And rosé sales, but sparkling wine, including champagne, cava, and prosecco, is the second leading sales. Obviously, prosecco driving that market. I mean, we're seeing just this incredible amount of prosecco being sold. And other sparkling wine from France, Cremant sales are up. Cremant is like half the price of champagne. I've done numerous videos trying to tell people the differences between sparkling wine, Cremant, and champagne. Is quite a big difference, and champagne is very expensive. But these are all categories that I think are interesting. Now we're coming into the summertime, so I'm starting to notice though, different trends. People are drinking more white wine in the summer. I'm going to be talking a little bit about that because you can actually chill red wines, which is kind of cool today. People who chill wines, the sales are actually going up on that. What does that tell you? That people are starting to have a different thought process. People don't want to drink wine at room temperature. What's room temperature? In some people's house is 70 degrees. When you drink a red wine at 70 degrees, the alcohol is going to show more. So yes, this is something that we're starting to see a lot more activity. So I want to wrap this up really quick because I think that the state of the industry is still strong. I'm an optimist. I am not a pessimist. The wine business, I think, is going through its bumps. I think that right now the economy, people are kind of holding back a little bit. There's a little issue with people spending a lot of money today. We don't know where the economy is going. We're keeping our fingers crossed that things are progressing in a positive way, at least with consumer sentiment, to spend money. And again, tariffs are not going to help. That's just going to raise prices that were already an industry that we're really like chipping away. I didn't need to tell everybody that inflation caused prices to go up, but tariffs is that's going to be more inflation on top of that. So we don't need tariffs. We're fighting again. Hats off to Victor Schwartz, VOS. They actually had an interview with him the other day. A very charming gentleman. He said he started the business with his mom, and I kind of chuckled because, that's how I started. I started my business with my mother in 1984. My mother was my partner. Victor Schwartz came out and said he started his business with my mom. So Victor and I have a lot in common, but he said the only thing that I wanted to do was bring delicious wines that I enjoyed, and I was hoping that, to bring it to other people and get them to enjoy. And that's the only reason why I even wanted to be in the wine business. And it was basically the same thing with me. It's a passion. I love it. I continue to love it. Victor Schwartz, thank you for standing up for all of us as independent small importers who are really trying to make this work. But again, this is David Kohl, and I want to sign off here. And I think that we will be bringing some wonderful wines to the table. Keep following us on YouTube, on my Apple podcast, on Instagram. We're doing a lot on LinkedIn, so please follow us. And we're coming up with new and different wines to taste, and I've got some new exciting wines this weekend to share with everybody. Cheers.